Hi everybody, we're back in my garden for chapter 10 of Alice in Wonderland. I hope you've all had a lovely Easter weekend, and I do hope the Easter Bunny managed to make it to your house. I know that he's been extra busy this year though, and with everything that's going on he's found it a little bit tricky to get to all of the houses that he usually does. So I hope he made it to you, but if he didn't, I still hope you had a lovely Easter weekend and had lots of fun at home with your family where you are safe. Here we are in the garden with Dennis, so you might hear a little bit of noise in the background, but I have just done a little test and it should still work fine. So in chapter 10, we're going to find out the mock turtle's story, because in the previous chapter, the Gryphon took Alice to meet the mock turtle, and I'll show you in case you're just picking up here and forgotten because it's been a few days. Here is the Gryphon and the mock turtle and Alice. And the mock turtle is telling Alice his story of why he's not a real turtle. So this chapter is called the Lobster Quadrille. The mock turtle sighed deeply and drew the back of one flapper across his eyes. He looked at Alice and tried to speak, but for a minute or two, sobs choked his voice. Same as if he had a bone in his throat, said the Gryphon, and it set to work shaking him and punching him on the back, trying to clear his throat. At last the mock turtle recovered his voice, and with tears streaming down his cheeks, he went on again. You may not have lived much under the sea. I haven't, said Alice. And perhaps you were never even introduced to a lobster. Alice began to say, I once tasted, but hastily checked herself and said, no, never. So you have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is? No, indeed, said Alice. What sort of a dance is it? Why, said the Gryphon, you first form a line along the seashore. 2 lines? Cried the Mock Turtle. Seals and turtles and so on. And when you've cleared the jellyfish out of the way. That generally takes some time, said the Gryphon. You advance twice, each with a lobster as a partner, cried the Gryphon. Of course, the Mock Turtle said. Advance twice, set to partners. James lobsters and retire in the same order, continued the Gryphon. Then, you know, the Mock Turtle went on, you throw the lobsters, shouted the Gryphon with a bound in the air, as far out to sea as you can. Swim after them, screamed the Gryphon. Turn a somersault in the sea, cried the Mock Turtle, capering wildly about. Change lobsters again, yelled the Gryphon. Back to land again, and that's all the first figure, said the Mock Turtle, suddenly dropping his voice. And the 2 creatures, who'd been jumping about like mad things, sat down again, very sadly and quietly, and looked at Alice. It must be a very pretty dance, said Alice timidly. Would you like to see a little of it? Said the Mock Turtle. Oh, very much indeed, said Alice. Well, let's try the first figure, said the Mock Turtle to the Gryphon. We can do without the lobsters, you know. Which shall sing? Oh, there's a song. Oh, you sing, said the Gryphon. I've forgotten the words. So they began solemnly dancing round and round Alice, every now and then treading on her toes when they passed too close, and waving their forepaws to mark the time, while the Mock Turtles sang this very slowly and sadly. Here they are, dancing their dance around Alice, treading on her toes and waving their flippers and paws around. Will you walk a little faster, said a whiting to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle, will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? You really can have no notion how delightful it would be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But then the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. He said the whiting kindly, he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go? His scaly friend replied. There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further up from England, the nearer is to France. The turn up pale, the lovers nail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance? Oh, thank you. It's very interesting to watch, said Alice, feeling very glad that it was over at last. I'm sure you're glad too. And I do so like that curious song about the whiting. Oh, as to the whiting, said the Mock Turtle, you've seen them, of course. Yes, said Alice. I've often seen them at we eat whiting, very small white fish. Humans have them with their food sometimes. Alice nearly said at dinner, but she's learned that that's not a very good idea. I don't know where Din may be, said the Mock Turtle, but if you've seen them so often, of course you know what they're like. I believe so, Alice replied. They have their tails in their mouths, and they're all over crumbs. Well, you're wrong about the crumbs, said the Mock Turtle. Crumbs would wash all off in the sea, but they have their tails in their mouths, and the reason is... Here the Mock Turtle yawned and shut his eyes. Tell her the reason and all that, he said to the Gryphon. The reason is, said the Gryphon, that they would go with the lobsters to the dance, so they got thrown to sea, so they had to fall a long way, so they got their tails fast in their mouths and they couldn't get them out again. That's all. Oh, thank you, said Alice. That's very interesting. I never knew so much about whiting before. I can tell you more than that if you like, said the Gryphon. Do you know why it's called a whiting? I never really thought about it, said Alice. Why? It does the boots and shoes, the Gryphon replied. Alice was thoroughly puzzled. Does the boots and shoes? Why, what are your shoes done with? Said the Gryphon. I mean, what makes them so shiny? Alice looked down at them and considered a little before she gave her answer. They're done with black ink, I suppose. Boots and shoes under the sea, the Gryphon went on in a voice, are done with whiting. Now you know. And what are they made of? Alice asked in a tone of curiosity. Soles and eels, of course. Do you have soles and eels on your shoes? Bet you do. The Gryphon replied rather impatiently. Any shrimp could have told you that. If I'd been a whiting, said Alice, whose thoughts were still running on the song, I'd have said to the porpoise, keep back, please. We don't want you with us. Well, they were obliged to have him with them. No wise fish would go anywhere without a porpoise. Wouldn't it really? Said Alice in a tone of great surprise. Of course not, said the Mock Turtle. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I would say, with which porpoise? Don't you mean purpose? Said Alice. I mean what I say, the Mock Turtle replied, and the Gryphon added, Come on, let's hear some of your adventures. I could tell you my adventures, beginning from this morning, said Alice, but it's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then. Explain all that, said the Mock Turtle. No, the adventures first, said the Gryphon. Explanations take such a dreadful time. So Alice began telling them her adventures from the time when she first saw the White Rabbit. She was a little nervous about it at first, and the two creatures got so close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths so very wide. But she gained courage as she went on. Her listeners were perfectly quiet till she got to the part about her repeating, You are old Father William, to the caterpillar, and the words all coming out different. And the Mock Turtle drew a long breath and said, That's very curious. It's all about as curious as it can be, said the Gryphon. It all came different. The Mock Turtle repeated, I should like to hear her repeating something now. Tell her to begin. He looked at the Gryphon, as if he thought he had some sort of authority over Alice. Stand up and repeat, 'Tis the voice of the sluggard, said the Gryphon. How these creatures all run about, making me repeat lessons, thought Alice. I might as well be at school. However, she got up and began to repeat it, but her head was so full of Lobster Quadrille that she hardly knew what she was saying, and the words came out very queer indeed. "'Tis the voice of a lobster," I heard him declare. "You have baked me too brown, I must sugar my hair, as a duck with its eyelids, and so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons, and turns out his toes. When the sands are all dry, he is gay as a lark, and will talk in contemptuous tones of a shark. But when the tide rises and sharks are around, his voice has a timid and tremulous sound. That's different to what I used to say as a child, said the Gryphon. Well, I've never heard it before, said the Mock Turtle, but it sounds like uncommon nonsense. Alice said nothing. She had sat down with her face in her hands, wondering if anything would ever happen in the natural way again. I should like to have it explained, said the Mock Turtle. She can't explain it, said the Gryphon. Go on to the next verse. What about his toes? The Mock Turtle persisted. How could he turn them out with his nose? It's the first position in dancing, Alice said, but was dreadfully puzzled by it all, and longed to change the subject. Go on with the next verse, the Gryphon repeated. It begins with, I passed by his garden. Alice did not dare to disobey, though she felt sure it would come out all wrong. She went on in a trembling voice. I passed by his garden and marked with one eye how the owl and the panther were sharing a pie. The panther took pie crust and gravy and meat, while the owl had the dish as its share of the treat. When the pie was all finished, the owl, as a boon, was kindly permitted to pocket the spoon, while the panther received knife and fork with a growl, and concluded the banquet. What is the use of repeating all that stuff? The Mock Turtle interrupted, if you don't explain it as you go on. It's by far the most confusing thing I ever heard. Yes, think you'd better leave off, said the Gryphon, and Alice was only so glad to do so. Shall we try another of the Lobster Quadrille? The Gryphon went on. Or would you like the Mock Turtle to sing you a song? Oh, a song, please! If the Mock Turtle would be so kind, Alice replied, so eagerly that the Gryphon said, in a rather offended tone, no accounting for taste. Sing her turtle soup, old fellow. The Mock Turtle sighed deeply, I can understand, and began, in a voice choked with sobs, to sing, Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who would not give all else for 2 penny old worth of beautiful soup? Pennyworth only of beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Chorus again, cried the Gryphon, and the Mock Turtle had just begun to repeat it when a cry of the trial's beginning was heard in the distance. Come on, cried the Gryphon, and taking Alice by the hand, it hurried off without waiting for the end of the song. What trial is it? Alice panted as she ran, but the Gryphon only answered, Come on, and ran the faster, while more and more faintly came, carried on the breeze that followed them, those words, Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. And that's the end of chapter 10. So the next chapter is about the trial. A trial is when somebody goes to court to be found by a judge and a jury of people about whether they are guilty or not of committing some sort of crime. And the title of the next chapter is called Who Stole the Tarts? Do you think somebody stole the Queen's jam tarts? Let's see, shall we? In chapter 11, next time. Hope you've enjoyed chapter 10, and I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 11.